Good morning, everybody. It's time for Reading with Mr. Bob again as we finish reading our first chapter of the book The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. Now, these chapters are fairly long, and so I'm going to break them into about 15-minute segments, which ends up to mean about a quarter of the chapter per segment. One other small thing, perhaps you notice the little flickering that's on the screen there. My equipment's somewhat older, so tried to fix that and I haven't been able to. It comes and goes, so hopefully that doesn't bother you too much. Anyway, this is chapter 1 of The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. Very well then, said Thorin. Supposing the burglar expert gives us some ideas or suggestions. He turned with mock politeness to Bilbo. First, I would like to know a bit more about things, said Bilbo, feeling all confused and a bit shaky inside, but so far still tookishly determined to go on with things. I mean about the gold and the dragon and all that, and how it got there and who it belongs to and so on and further. Bless me, said Thorin. Haven't you got a map? And didn't you hear our song? And haven't we been talking about all this for hours? All the same, I should like it plain and clear, said he obstinately, putting on his business manner, usually reserved for people who tried to borrow money off of him, and doing his best to appear wise and prudent and professional and live up to Gandalf's recommendation. By the way, prudent means properly done and properly arranged. Also, I should like to know about risks, out-of-pocket expenses, time required, and remuneration, which is another mean for compensation, or the money he gets for going on this journey. By which he meant, what am I going to get out of it, and how am I going to come back alive? Oh, very well, said Thorin. Long ago, in my grandfather Thorir's time, our family was driven out of the far north, and came back with all their wealth and their tools to this mountain on the map. It had been discovered by my far ancestor Thrain the Old, but now they mined, and they tunneled, and they made huger halls, and great workshops. In addition, I believe they found a good deal of gold, and a great many jewels as well. Anyway, they grew immensely rich and famous, and my grandfather was king under the mountain again, and treated with great reverence by the mortal men, who lived to the south, and were gradually spreading up the running river as far as the valley overshadowed by the mountain. They built the merry town of Dale there in those days. Kings used to send for our smiths, and reward even the least skillful of them most richly. Fathers would beg us to take their sons as apprentices, and pay us handsomely, especially in food supplies, which we never bothered to grow or find for ourselves. Altogether, those were good days for us, and the poorest of us had money to spend and to lend, and leisure to make beautiful things just for the fun of it. Not to speak of the most marvelous and magical toys, the like of which is not to be found in the world nowadays. So my grandfather's halls became full of armor and jewels and carvings and cups, and the toy market of Dale was the wonder of the north. Undoubtedly, that was what brought the dragon. Dragons steal gold and jewels, you know, from men and elves and dwarves, wherever they can find them, and they guard their plunder as long as they live, which is practically forever unless they are killed, and never enjoy a brass ring of it. Indeed, they hardly know a good bit of work from bad, though they usually have a good notion of the current market value, and they can't make a thing for themselves, not even mend a little loose scale for their armor. There were lots of dragons in the north in those days, and gold was probably getting scarce up there, with the dwarves flying south or getting killed, and all the general waste and destruction that dragons make going from bad to worse. There was an especially greedy, strong, and wicked worm named Smog. One day he flew up into the air and came south. The first we heard of it was a noise like a hurricane coming from the north, and pine trees on the mountain creaking and cracking in the wind. Some of the dwarves who happened to be outside, I was one luckily, a fine adventurous lad in those days, always wandering about, and it saved my life that day. Well, from a good way off we saw the dragon settle on our mountain in a spout of flame. Then he came down the slopes, and when he reached the woods they all went up in fire. By that time all the bells were ringing in Dale, and the warriors were arming. The dwarves rushed out of their gate, but there was the dragon waiting for them. None escaped that day, or escaped that way, The river rushed up in steam, and a fog fell on Dale. And in the fog the dragon came on them and destroyed most of the warriors. The usual unhappy story. It was only too common in those days. Then he went back and crept in through the front gate and routed out all the halls and lanes and tunnels, alleys, cellars, mansions, and passages. After that there were no more dwarves left alive inside, and he took all their wealth for himself. Probably for that is the dragon's way. He has piled it all up in a great heap far inside, and he sleeps on it for a bed. Later he used to crawl out of the great gate and come by night to Dale, and carry away people, especially maidens, to eat, until Dale was ruined, and all the people dead or gone. What goes on there I don't know for certain, but I don't suppose anyone lives nearer to the mountain than the far edge of the long lake nowadays. The few of us that were well outside sat and wept in hiding, and cursed the smog. And there we were unexpectedly joined by my father and my grandfather, with singed beards. They looked very grim, but they said very little. When I asked how they had got away, he told me to hold my tongue, and said that one day, in the proper time, I should know. After that he went away, and we've had to earn our living as best as we could up and down the lands, often enough sinking low as blacksmith work, or even coal mining. But we have never forgotten our stolen treasure, and now, even now, I will allow that we have a good bit laid by, and are not so badly off. Here Thorin stroked the gold chain around his neck. But we still mean to get it back, and to bring our curses home to Smog, if we can. I have often wondered about my father and my grandfather's escape. I wonder how they must have had a private side door, which only they knew about. But apparently they made a map, and I should like to know how Gandalf got a hold of it, and why it did not come to me, the rightful heir. I did not get a hold of it. I was given it, said the wizard. Your grandfather Thror was killed, you remember, in the mines of Moria by Azog the goblin. Curse his name, yes, said Thorin. And Thrain, your father, went away on the 21st of April, 100 years ago last Thursday, and has never again been seen by you since. True, said Thorin. Well, your father gave this to give to you, and I have chosen my own time and way of handing it over. You can hardly blame me, considering the trouble I had to find you. Your father could not remember his own name when he gave me the paper, and he never told me yours. So on the whole, I think I ought to be praised and thanked. Here it is, he said, handing the map to Thorin. I don't understand, said Thorin, and Bilbo felt he would like to have said the same. The explanation did not seem to explain. Your grandfather, said the wizard slowly and grimly, gave the map to his son for safety before he went to the mines of Moria. Your father went away to try his luck with the map after your grandfather was killed, and lots of adventures of a most unpleasant sort he had, but he never got near the mountain. How he got there I don't know, but I found him a prisoner in the dungeons of the necromancer. What were you doing there? Asked Thorin with a shudder, and all the dwarves shivered. Never you mind. I was finding things out, as usual, and a nasty, dangerous business it was. Even I, Gandalf, only just escaped. I tried to save your father, but it was too late. He was witless and wandering, and had forgotten almost everything except the map and the key. We have long ago paid the goblins of Moria, said Thorin. We must give a thought to the necromancer. Don't be absurd. He is an enemy quite beyond the powers of all the dwarves put together. If they could all be collected again from the four corners of the world. The one thing your father wished was for his son to read the map and use the key. The dragon and the mountain are more than big enough tasks for you. Hear, hear, said Bilbo, and accidentally said it aloud. Hear what? They all said, turning suddenly towards him, and he was so flustered that he answered, Hear what I've got to say. Well, what's that? Well, I should say that you ought to go east and have a look around. After all, there is the side door, and dragons must sleep sometimes, I suppose. If you sit on the doorstep long enough, I dare say you will think of something. And well, you don't know. I think we have talked long enough for one night, if you see what I mean. What about bed and an early start and all that? I will give you a good breakfast before you go. Before we go, I suppose you mean, said Thorin. Aren't you the burglar? And isn't sitting on the doorstep your job? Not to speak of getting inside the door. But I agree about bed and breakfast. I like eggs with my ham when starting on a journey, fried and poached. And mind you, don't break them. After all the others had ordered their breakfast without so much as a please, which annoyed Bilbo very much, they all got up. The Hobbit had to find room for them all, and filled all of his spare rooms, and made beds on chairs and sofas. Before he got all of them stowed and went to his own little bed very tired, and not altogether happy. One thing he did make up his mind about was not to bother to get up very early and to cook everybody else's wretched breakfast. The tookishness was wearing off, and he was not now quite so sure as to that he was going on any journey in the morning. As he lay in bed, he could hear Thorin still humming to himself in the best bedroom next to him. For over the misty mountains cold, to dungeons deep and caverns old, we must away ere break of day, to find our long-forgotten gold. Bilbo went to sleep with that in his ears, and it gave him very uncomfortable dreams. It was long after the break of day when he finally woke up. And that's the end of chapter 1. I'm glad you made it with me. Continue to work on reading on your own. If you can find a copy of The Hobbit, read along with me. It's a very interesting book. It was one of the big books for me when I was growing up, as I think I've told you. Anyway, try to get some exercise. Get outside if you can. We have to maintain social distancing. It's still important to get some kind of exercise. You could even do something amazing, like do some chores for your parents or whoever it is that you're with right now. So, take care, and may you have a good day. I'll talk to you soon. Mr. Bob saying goodbye.